What if the moment that changes everything doesn't begin with a confession, but with two ordinary people having a conversation they never realized would uncover the truth? Listen carefully, because somewhere recently, your soulmate found themselves hearing words that were never meant to carry such extraordinary weight. At first, nothing about the conversation seemed unusual. It began like any other discussion about the past, filled with casual observations and forgotten memories. But then one unexpected detail surfaced, followed by another, until pieces that had remained scattered for so many years suddenly fit together with startling clarity. In that instant, your soulmate felt something they had not experienced in a very long time. It wasn't simply surprise. It was the unsettling feeling that the story they had believed about your separation had never been complete. They had spent so much time accepting one version of events that they never imagined another version could exist. Yet now, for the first time, they could no longer ignore the possibility that everything had unfolded for reasons far different than they once believed. Listen closely, because this is where the hidden truth begins revealing itself. As those words continued echoing in their mind long after the conversation ended, they realized there was one question they had never seriously asked themselves. What if the distance between you wasn't created by the reasons they had always assumed? What if something hidden beneath the surface quietly influenced decisions, emotions, and misunderstandings until both of you were pulled in different directions without fully realizing what was happening? That single thought refused to leave them. Suddenly, memories they had not revisited in years returned with remarkable clarity. Moments that once appeared insignificant now seemed filled with meaning they had completely overlooked. Conversations that ended abruptly. Misunderstandings that escalated far too quickly, unexpected changes in behavior, and opportunities that disappeared without explanation, all began connecting in ways they never thought possible. It was as though someone had quietly removed a veil from their eyes, allowing them to see familiar memories from an entirely different perspective. The deeper they reflected, the more speechless they became. They realized they had spent years believing the separation was caused by obvious circumstances, never considering that hidden influences, incomplete information, or quiet misunderstandings might have shaped everything from behind the scenes. This realization did not fill them with immediate anger. Instead, it filled them with disbelief. They kept asking themselves how so many important details could have remained unnoticed for so long. How could something so significant stay hidden in plain sight? Every answer they tried to give themselves only led to another question, and every question pulled them deeper into a journey they never expected to take. They are beginning to understand that the greatest obstacles in life are not always the ones we can easily identify. Sometimes they are built little by little through assumptions, silence, confusion, and stories accepted without ever being challenged. Your soulmate now feels that they are standing at the edge of a truth, powerful enough to rewrite everything they believed about your connection. The conversation may have lasted only a few moments, but its impact continues growing with every passing day because it awakened something far greater than curiosity. It awakened the determination to uncover what really happened, to separate appearance from reality, and to finally understand whether the story they carried in their heart all these years was ever truly the whole story at all. The conversation refused to leave your soulmate's mind because it did something they never thought was possible. It made them question memories they had considered settled for years. Listen carefully, because this is where everything begins shifting in a completely unexpected direction. Instead of searching for new answers, they found themselves returning to old moments with a completely different perspective. They no longer looked at your separation as one isolated event. Instead, they started seeing it as a chain of small moments, each connected to the next in ways they had never recognized before. They remembered conversations that suddenly ended without explanation, moments when emotions seemed far stronger than the situation itself required. and misunderstandings that appeared almost impossible to resolve, despite how deeply both of you cared. At the time, they believed those moments were simply unfortunate circumstances. Now they are beginning to wonder whether those moments were quietly shaped by something they never stopped to question. That realization has become impossible to ignore. Every memory feels as though it contains another hidden detail waiting to be discovered. They think about people who entered the story only briefly, yet somehow influenced important decisions. They remember advice they accepted without examining whether it truly reflected reality. They recall moments when assumptions replaced honest conversations, allowing confusion to grow where clarity should have existed. None of these memories seemed important before, but now they fit together like scattered pieces of a puzzle that has finally begun revealing its true picture. The deeper they reflect, the more they understand that confusion rarely appears all at once. It grows quietly through tiny misunderstandings that seem harmless until they eventually create distance between two people who never intended to lose each other. That thought has humbled them more than they expected, because it forces them to admit how easily certainty can be built upon incomplete information. They realize now that they were not seeing the entire landscape. They were only seeing the portion directly in front of them. Everything happening beneath the surface remained hidden, quietly influencing emotions, expectations, and decisions without ever announcing its presence. As they continue examining the past, another pattern quietly emerges. They begin noticing how often they accepted appearances without asking what might exist beyond them. If someone seemed confident, they assumed they knew the full story. If a situation appeared obvious, they never searched for deeper explanations. Looking back now, they recognize how easily first impressions can become permanent beliefs when no one takes the time to question them. This realization has transformed the way they remember your connection. They think about moments when your reaction seemed unexpectedly cautious, times when you hesitated before making important decisions, and occasions when you appeared to carry concerns you never fully explained. Back then, they interpreted those moments according to the limited understanding they possessed. Today, however, those same memories seem entirely different. They no longer see hesitation. They see someone responding to circumstances they themselves did not fully understand. They no longer see emotional distance. They see someone trying to navigate uncertainty while protecting something deeply important. Every reflection replaces another old assumption with a new possibility. And every new possibility brings them closer to understanding that the truth was never as simple as they once believed. This process has not been easy for them, because every discovery requires them to release another belief they defended for years. They realize that admitting we misunderstood something meaningful is one of the hardest forms of emotional growth. It requires humility instead of pride, curiosity instead of certainty, and patience instead of quick conclusions. Yet despite the discomfort, they continue moving forward because something inside them knows this journey matters. They are no longer interested in preserving the story that once made them feel comfortable. They want the story that is true, even if it challenges everything they previously accepted. That desire has become stronger than the fear of discovering difficult answers. They understand now that truth never weakens a genuine connection. It only removes the misunderstandings that prevented people from seeing it clearly in the first place. Another realization has quietly begun reshaping their heart. They notice that many of the moments they once considered random now seem connected by a single invisible thread. Small misunderstandings were never addressed before larger misunderstandings appeared. Important conversations were replaced by assumptions. Emotional reactions took the place of patient listening. Each event by itself seemed insignificant, but together they created an entirely different outcome than either of you may have intended. They now recognize that separation is rarely caused by one dramatic event alone. More often, it grows gradually through unanswered questions, incomplete understanding, misplaced trust, and opportunities for honesty that quietly pass by unnoticed. This awareness has removed much of the anger they once carried, because they finally understand how easily sincere people can lose sight of each other when confusion is allowed to speak louder than truth. As this understanding deepens, your soulmate also begins changing the way they approach every important relationship in their life. They no longer rush to believe the first explanation they hear. They ask more questions. They listen more carefully. They recognize that every situation deserves compassion before judgment, because there are always unseen details shaping what appears on the surface. This lesson has become one of the greatest gifts hidden inside this painful chapter. It has taught them that discernment is not about becoming suspicious of everyone around them. It's about remaining open enough to recognize that every story contains layers, which only reveal themselves through patience, honesty, and genuine reflection. They have learned that the loudest explanation is not always the truest one, and the most convincing version of events is not always the most complete. Now they find themselves standing in a place they never expected to reach. They are no longer trying to identify a single person to blame, because they have realized the deeper problem was much more subtle than that. Misunderstandings were allowed to grow. Assumptions were accepted without question. Silence replaced conversations that might have changed everything. Fear quietly filled the spaces where trust should have lived. Looking back, they understand that the greatest enemy of this connection was never simply one event or one decision. It was the gradual loss of clarity that unfolded one unnoticed moment at a time. That realization has left them speechless, because it has shown them that what seemed like an ending may have actually been the result of countless invisible moments that neither heart fully understood while they were happening. And now, having finally seen those hidden pieces, they know they can never again look at your separation through the simple story they once believed. Because the truth they are uncovering is far deeper, far more human, and far more transformative than anything they ever imagined possible. As your soulmate continues following the trail left behind by that unexpected conversation, they slowly realize that the greatest shock is no longer what was revealed. It is discovering how easily their own heart accepted a story that was never complete. Listen carefully, because this part of the journey has nothing to do with blaming anyone. It is about awakening to a truth that has quietly been waiting beneath the surface all along. For the first time, they stop asking, "Who caused this?" and begin asking a far more meaningful question. How did I become so certain about something I never fully understood? That single question changes everything. It forces them to look inward instead of outward. They begin recognizing that every conclusion they reached about your separation was built from the information they had at the time, but information is not always the same as truth. They understand now that people naturally fill in missing pieces with assumptions because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. The heart longs for explanations, even incomplete ones, because unanswered questions can feel heavier than imperfect answers. Looking back, they realize that they accepted a version of the past not because it was proven beyond doubt, but because it seemed to make sense during a season when emotions were louder than clarity. Today, however, they have reached a place where wisdom speaks more clearly than emotion, and that wisdom is asking them to see everything through entirely different eyes. As they continue reflecting, memories begin returning with remarkable clarity. But this time, they are no longer viewing those moments through disappointment or confusion. They are viewing them through compassion. They remember conversations where emotions rose quickly, yet neither of you truly paused to understand what the other was carrying beneath the surface. They remember situations where silence replaced honesty, not because there was nothing to say, but because neither heart knew how to express everything it was feeling. They begin realizing that misunderstanding often grows in the empty spaces left behind when fear becomes stronger than communication. That realization has humbled them deeply. They understand now that sincere people can unintentionally lose each other, not because love disappears, but because confusion slowly takes the place of clarity. Every reflection teaches them another lesson about how easily assumptions can become permanent beliefs when they are never challenged. They no longer feel the need to defend the story they once believed because they can now see how incomplete it truly was. This awakening also changes the way they think about trust. In the past, they believed trust meant having confidence in their own understanding of every situation. Now they recognize that real trust also requires humility. It requires admitting that no one sees every hidden detail. Every person experiences life through their own perspective, carrying private fears, unseen struggles, and silent hopes that others may never fully recognize. They realized they were never intentionally deceived by the heart. Instead, they were limited by perspective. They were trying to understand an entire journey while seeing only a few chapters. Once they accepted their truth, something inside them softened. The frustration they once carried gradually gave way to compassion, not only for you, but also for themselves. They stopped criticizing themselves for not knowing what they could not have known. Instead, they became grateful that life had finally brought them to a place where deeper understanding was possible. They now believe emotional maturity is not measured by always being right. It is measured by the willingness to change when new truth appears. As this transformation continues, your soulmate notices that they are no longer searching for a villain in the story. They understand that life is often more complicated than simple ideas of heroes and enemies. Misunderstandings grow quietly. Fear influences choices without announcing itself. Silence creates distance where conversation might have created healing. Outside opinions can seem trustworthy until time reveals how incomplete they truly were. They now recognize that the greatest obstacle was never a single dramatic moment. It was the gradual accumulation of small misunderstandings that neither of you fully recognized while they were happening. That realization has replaced anger with wisdom. It has shown them that protecting old assumptions only keeps people trapped in yesterday, while embracing truth creates the freedom to see both the past and the future with greater clarity. They understand now that wisdom often arrives disguised as discomfort because every important truth first asks us to release something we once believed with complete confidence. Now, they stand in a place they never imagined reaching. The conversation that first unsettled them has become the beginning of an entirely different life lesson. They no longer see your separation as proof that the connection lacked meaning. Instead, they see it as evidence that even the strongest connections can become clouded when understanding gives way to assumption. They know they cannot rewrite what happened, but they also know they are no longer bound by the story they once accepted without question. They have chosen something stronger than certainty. They have chosen understanding. They have chosen patience over judgment, truth over appearance, and compassion over pride. That choice has permanently changed them because they now realize the greatest victory was never uncovering hidden information. It was allowing that information to transform the way they see love, trust, forgiveness, and the quiet complexity of the human heart. And with every passing day, they become more certain that the most powerful revelations are not the ones that expose another person. They are the ones that quietly transform the person willing enough to receive the truth with humility, wisdom, and an open heart. As your soulmate continues reflecting on everything they have uncovered, they begin realizing that the truth has done something far greater than explain the past. It has completely changed the direction of their future. Listen carefully, because this is the moment where understanding becomes transformation. There was a time when they believed they had already accepted everything that happened between you. They told themselves there was nothing left to discover and no reason to reopen chapters that had long since closed. But now they understand that acceptance built upon misunderstanding is not true peace. It is simply a pause before deeper truth arrives. The shocking conversation did not give them all the answers overnight, but it gave them something much more valuable. It gave them permission to question the beliefs they had carried for years, without ever examining whether those beliefs were completely true. That single shift has quietly changed the way they think about every important decision they now make. They no longer rush to conclusions simply because the situation appears obvious. They understand that appearances can be incomplete, emotions can distort perspective, and assumptions can quietly become chains that keep people trapped in stories that were never entirely accurate. This realization has become one of the greatest turning points of their life because it has taught them that wisdom is not found in defending yesterday's beliefs. Wisdom is found in having the courage to replace those beliefs when greater truth finally reveals itself. Every day, they feel themselves becoming a different person, not because the past has changed, but because the meaning they now give the past has changed completely. Instead of remembering your separation only through disappointment, they now see it as a series of moments that deserve compassion instead of judgment. They understand that everyone involved was responding to what they believed was true at the time. Fear influenced choices. Silence allowed misunderstandings to grow. Incomplete conversations created unnecessary distance. Yet beneath all of that, genuine emotions continued existing, even when they became difficult to recognize. That understanding has removed much of the bitterness they once carried, because they finally realize that truth and misunderstanding can exist side by side until someone becomes willing to look deeper. As this awareness settles into their heart, they begin noticing changes reaching far beyond this connection. They find themselves listening more carefully before forming opinions. They ask questions instead of assuming they already know the full story. They recognize that every person carries unseen experiences, shaping their reactions in ways the outside world may never fully understand. This new perspective has made them more patient, more thoughtful, and far less willing to judge situations based solely on first impressions. They have discovered that emotional maturity is not about having all the answers. It is about remaining open enough to recognize when your understanding needs to grow. That lesson has quietly transformed every relationship in their life because they now value clarity more than certainty and truth more than comfort. Another realization continues growing stronger with each passing day. They understand that protecting familiar stories can sometimes become more dangerous than facing uncomfortable truths. For years they held tightly to an explanation because it felt complete, even though small questions remained unanswered. Those unanswered questions never disappeared. They simply waited until the right moment to return with greater clarity. Looking back, they recognized that every uncomfortable doubt they ignored was gently inviting them toward a deeper understanding they simply were not ready to receive. Today they no longer fear those questions. Instead, they welcome them because they know honest questions often become the doorway to lasting wisdom. This realization has given them a quiet confidence they have never experienced before. It is no longer based upon believing they understand everything. It is based upon trusting that truth always has a way of revealing itself to hearts willing to receive it. They no longer feel the need to defend old conclusions simply because they once believed them. They are free to grow beyond them, and that freedom has become one of the greatest gifts hidden within this entire experience. They also realize something profoundly important about your connection. What seemed like an ending may actually have become the beginning of their deepest emotional growth. Had everything unfolded easily, they might never have learned the value of discernment, humility, patience, or honest reflection. It was precisely because the story became complicated that they were forced to become wiser. Every misunderstanding challenged them to look deeper. Every unanswered question encouraged greater self-awareness. Every hidden truth strengthened their ability to recognize authenticity instead of appearance. They now understand that genuine transformation rarely begins during comfortable seasons. It begins when familiar beliefs are challenged and the heart becomes willing to rebuild itself upon stronger foundations. That is exactly what has happened here. They are no longer the person who walked away believing the first explanation they received. They have become someone who values understanding above assumption and reflection above reaction. As they move forward, they carry a completely different perspective than the one they once defended. They know that not every painful chapter has a simple villain, not every misunderstanding begins with bad intentions, and not every separation tells the complete story at first glance. Sometimes the greatest obstacle is not another person at all. Sometimes it is fear speaking louder than communication, assumption replacing curiosity, and silence filling the space where honesty should have lived. Recognizing that truth has forever changed the way they see you, the past, and themselves. They understand now that the conversation which first left them speechless was never simply exposing hidden facts about what happened. It was quietly preparing them to become someone capable of seeing beyond appearances, embracing deeper truth, and carrying a wisdom that will guide every meaningful relationship they experience from this moment forward. As your soulmate reaches the end of this extraordinary journey of discovery, they realize that the most shocking part of the conversation was never the information itself. It was what that information awakened inside their own heart. Listen carefully, because this final realization changes everything. For years, they believed your separation had one simple explanation. They thought the story had already been written. The reasons had already been understood, and nothing remained except memories that slowly faded with time. But now they understand how incomplete that belief truly was. The conversation that first left them speechless did far more than uncover hidden pieces of the past. It dismantled an entire way of thinking. It revealed that truth is rarely found in the first explanation people accept. More often, truth waits patiently beneath assumptions, hidden behind emotions, silence and moments that only reveal their meaning after enough time has passed. Looking back, they can now see that every unanswered question was quietly leading them toward this moment of understanding. Every confusing memory carried a lesson they simply were not ready to receive. Every painful misunderstanding became another step toward the wisdom they now possess. Instead of asking why everything happened, they have begun asking what every experience was trying to teach them. That single shift has completely transformed the way they remember your connection. They no longer see only separation. They see growth. They no longer see only disappointment. They see preparation. They no longer see only silence. They see opportunities for understanding that were hidden until the right season arrived. This realization has become one of the greatest turning points of their life, because it has shown them that the deepest truths often arrive long after the loudest emotions have faded away. As they continue reflecting, they recognize something that leaves them humbled beyond words. The greatest obstacle was never simply another person standing between two hearts. The greatest obstacle was the invisible distance created whenever assumptions replaced honest understanding. They remember how quickly conclusions formed when important conversations never happened. They remember how easily uncertainty grew whenever silence lasted longer than clarity. They now realize that fear has a remarkable ability to write stories that feel convincing, even when those stories are missing their most important chapters. They understand that everyone involved was responding to the information they believed was true at the time. No one could act according to truths they had not yet discovered. That awareness has softened every painful memory because it has replaced blame with compassion. They no longer feel the need to identify a single villain responsible for everything that happened. Instead, they recognize that misunderstanding itself became the greatest enemy. It quietly distorted intentions, magnified fears, and allowed two sincere hearts to lose sight of each other without either fully realizing how it happened. That realization has freed them from carrying burdens that no longer belong in their heart. They understand now that wisdom begins where blame finally ends. Another profound truth has also settled deeply within them. They realize that genuine connections are not measured only by the seasons when everything feels easy. They are also measured by what those connections continue, teaching long after circumstances change. Your connection became one of life's greatest teachers for them. It taught them the importance of asking questions before accepting assumptions. It taught them that listening with humility often reveals more than speaking with certainty. It taught them that appearances can never fully explain another person's journey because every heart carries private battles invisible to everyone else. These lessons have become part of who they are now. They approach people differently than they once did. They offer patience where they once offered quick conclusions. They choose curiosity instead of judgment. They recognize that every person deserves the grace of being understood before being evaluated. That transformation has extended far beyond this one chapter of their life. It has changed how they love, how they trust, and how they navigate every meaningful relationship that follows. Looking back, they now understand that this painful experience quietly shaped them into someone far wiser than they would have become if everything had unfolded according to their original expectations. As they reach this moment of clarity, they also realize something deeply comforting. They cannot rewrite the past, but they no longer need to. The truth has already accomplished something much greater than changing old memories. It has changed the person remembering those memories. That is why this discovery feels so powerful. It was never only about uncovering hidden facts. It was about allowing those facts to transform the heart that received them. They understand now that every difficult chapter served a purpose beyond immediate understanding. Every season of confusion prepared them to value clarity. Every unanswered question strengthened their desire for truth. Every misunderstanding taught them the importance of compassion. Those lessons have become lasting gifts they will carry for the rest of their life. Now, when they think about you, they no longer see only the separation that once defined their memories. They see two people whose journey became far more complicated than either of them realized at the time. They see moments that deserved more patience, conversations that deserved more honesty, and emotions that deserved more understanding than they were given. Most importantly, they see how easily genuine connections can become clouded when fear, assumptions, and silence are allowed to speak louder than truth. That understanding has forever changed the way they see this entire story. The shocking conversation that first left them speechless did not simply expose hidden details about the past. It revealed the deeper wisdom hidden within it. It taught them that truth always outlasts illusion, that compassion always reaches further than blame, and that genuine love is strongest when it inspires people to grow rather than remain imprisoned by old misunderstandings. From this moment forward, they carry that wisdom with them, knowing that the greatest victory was never discovering who stood behind the separation. The greatest victory was discovering a truth powerful enough to replace years of confusion with clarity, years of assumptions with understanding, and years of silence with a peace that finally allows the heart to see the entire story as it was always meant to be seen.